Welcome to the Christina Loren Show, where we deliver the raw, uncut truths that the mainstream media seems to leave on the cutting room floor. Here we will spill that tea that they won't even dare to brew about what's actually happening in our country today. This is episode number 2. I'm thrilled that you're here with me for it. And I wanted to take some time to focus in on our Commander-in-Chief's self-constructed crisis at the border.
Folks, on my first day as president, I introduced a bill I sent to Congress, a comprehensive plan to fix the broken immigration system and to secure the border.
Now, just a few months ago, I had a chance to visit the southern border and see just how bad the situation has become. After seeing firsthand where the wall ends and clear-cut unlawful crossings begin in Cochise County, Arizona, I was shocked to witness the vast piles of expensive, unused border wall materials just sitting there left to decay for years now. These steel beams were purchased during Trump's presidency with your tax dollars. But instead of being installed over the mountain to prevent illegal crossings, President Biden issued 17 executive orders on his very first day in office, including a pause on all border wall construction. This is tantamount to your money gathering dust instead of being used to actively safeguard us. Now, before we go any further, I think it's important to point out that I am very proud of my Hispanic heritage. My great-grandmother, seen here, spoke very little English. She came to America from Mexico, and she lived to be 100 years old in these United States. So guided by my heritage and my Christian faith, I wholeheartedly recognize that this issue transcends politics. This is a human issue. It's the promise of our country's greatness that motivates people to seek a better life here, and I recognize that.
The largest caravan this year, some 8,000, set off Friday from southern Mexico to the U.S. border, a self-described exodus from poverty.
The President of the United States must help us, as we are migrants.
But the situation has spiraled out of control after President Biden basically flung open our southern border as if he was making a grand entrance at a party during his first 100 days in office. In doing so, he essentially rolled out the red carpet for human traffickers and drug smugglers who have raked in billions of dollars since he took office.
Migrants come not just from Mexico, El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala, but in the last fiscal year, more than half arrived from across the globe, including 7,000 Russians and 35,000 Chinese.
And many are rightfully concerned that our foreign adversaries have abused the border as a superhighway to infiltrate America with enemy operatives who now live among us. This has been going on for over 3 years now. And just days ago, our president finally cracked open the How to Actually Help Americans manual, unveiling a sweeping executive order to curb the surging number of illegal crossings.
So today, I'm moving past Republican obstruction and using the executive authorities available to me as president to do what I can on my own to address the border.
But many of our lawmakers say it's too little, too late.
For 3 years, President Biden told us all, there is no crisis at the southern border for reasons clearly stated on the teleprompter. And his plan to deal with the crisis at the border was to pretend that there wasn't a crisis at the border. So now he has decided to tell you that he has been born again. He has had an epiphany. He is now a border hawk. It's a little late, isn't it, Mr. President? It's a little late. You can't make this cat walk backwards.
For further insight, we now turn to who I like to call the Matthew McConaughey of Congress, U.S. Representative Clay Higgins.
My Democrat colleagues across the aisle appear to be saying to Americans across the country that have endured border policies enacted on the day that President Biden was inaugurated.
On my very first day as president, I introduced a comprehensive immigration reform plan to fix our broken system.
It began as actions, executive actions, to change the policy of this country, to open our border. Wasn't the cartels that changed on January the 20th of 2021? It was the President of the United States. It wasn't the 1,954 miles of our border that changed in January 2021. It was the President of the United States. Changed our policies. And the world was listening, was it not?
Not to weaponize the border, but to fix it.
So Americans that have endured 15 million illegals crossing in our country in 4 years, crime waves rolling across America from sea to shining sea, fentanyl poisoning, killing 100,000 Americans per year. Americans across the country that have an objection to that, and we got a problem with that. Apparently, the Democrats are saying we're all a bunch of Nazis, white supremacists. That's like disconnected from reality, man.
The number of migrants coming and to our shared border unlawfully in recent months has dropped dramatically.
You heard it straight from the president. Our numbers are down. But how does he know that if we're not accurately keeping track of those numbers? Despite the glaring problem, right before our very eyes, we're being led to believe that the border issue is magically improving. It begs the question, who exactly is writing these fairy tales for our president? I certainly have my suspicions. Sounds to me like it's coming directly from the Bureau of Bedtime Stories. In a recent Gallup poll, Americans were asked, what one country, anywhere in the world, do you consider to be the United States' greatest enemy today? The overwhelming majority said China. This is no surprise, since the president of China, Xi Jinping, has openly vowed for world dominance by the year 2049, which is not that far off. This is why the unprecedented number of Chinese nationals crossing the southern border has sparked considerable attention from members of Congress and former President Donald Trump.
The fastest growing group crossing the border illegally is not from Mexico or South America, they're from China. Since President Biden has taken office, CBP encounters with Chinese nationals has risen over 4,200%.
A record-smashing 50,000 Chinese nationals have crossed the southern border since Biden entered office and stood up policies that mainline them into interior America within 48 hours. The Chinese people responded predictably to this unprecedented invitation. At current escalating rates, their numbers should hit 100,000 by 2024's end. All of China knows they'll be freed on personal recognizance for years and likely remain permanently. This administration tolerates mass illegal entry and asylum fraud. They disfigure and toss their passports, like this one, because the stamps inside prove their holders passed through safe countries that would have granted protection. That would disqualify them for U.S. asylum.
And now we got Chinese of means, Chinese healthy and well-funded coming into our country, being granted what? Asylum. These are healthy, well-funded, warrior-age young men coming into our country. Nobody over there has a problem with that?
In light of a recent speech Chinese Communist Party Chairman Xi Jinping delivered to party elites, in which he remarked, quote, "The most important characteristic of the world is, in a word, chaos, and this trend appears likely to continue," end quote. In that same speech, Xi Jinping noted, quote, "The times and trends are on our side." Beyond the clear security risks, China is also skillfully exploiting today's chaos to depict the U.S. as a faltering democracy, incapable of securing its borders. Chinese transnational criminal organizations are also ruthlessly exploiting our border vulnerabilities.
And look at this map that I did a show about this. The red is where Chinese government has funded buying major farmland.
Yeah.
And then superimposed on that are some of our most strategic military bases.
Do you have any examples of any of these bad actors that have entered the country illegally?
Well, one recent example that struck me was in March of this year in 29 Palms in California, there was a Chinese man who I think had crossed the border illegally and been released, who attempted to get onto the military base. And at the time, the local headlines, the local press said he was confused and he said he was lost, he didn't know where he was going. And I wrote at the time in an op-ed that, geez, if you were going to try to scope out a base and try to get some basic intel and figure out what the security procedures were at U.S. military bases, what better way than to send some, excuse me, but a doofus. But then I later found out that there have been over 100 of these incidents by Chinese nationals in the past few years, according to a source quoted by the Wall Street Journal. So one time, maybe, but 100 times starts to seem a little bit more like a pattern.
You have a fake news that doesn't report it the way they should be reporting it. Look, the news has been proven to be totally fake. And it's 95% on the other side. That's the thing I don't understand. Why do people want open borders where millions of people have come into our country and you see what's happening to the crime rate? You know, a stat came out the other day that's scary. In Venezuela, Caracas, different cities, they've moved many of these criminals out into the United States and now happily in a location near you. We have somebody negotiating for us and dealing for us who is not up to par, but he's dealing with President Xi of China, he's dealing with President Putin of Russia, he's dealing with Kim Jong-un of North Korea, he's dealing with very tough people that really are at the top of their game.
Another concerning aspect of President Biden's botched border policies raises questions about the sanctity of the vote in our upcoming elections.
Friday night, we were here voting. Probably it was a good thing for the Democrats as a Friday night because most of the media had gone home and wasn't covering it. You always want to bury something that happens, announced on a Friday night. We voted on an amendment that would have prevented illegal immigrants from being counted in the allocation of congressional seats and electoral college votes. Let me say that again. We voted on an amendment that would prevent illegal migrants from being counted in the allocation of congressional seats and the electoral college. Every single Democrat voted against that. Senate Democrats share responsibility for Biden's wide open southern border. This shouldn't be hard, folks. But Democrats, you saw it again on Friday night, are showing their true colors. And I'm confident the American people will hold them accountable in November.
We've seen it time after time. Something that the Democrat Party is very good at is uniting. Yet Republicans are alert to the risk and sounding the alarm on non-citizen voting. The 56th Speaker of the House and Congressman for Louisiana's 4th District, Mike Johnson, wrote on X, "If President Biden actually wanted to solve the border crisis, he could close it immediately. Instead, he's allowing thousands of illegals to cross because he wants to turn them into voters." A potential game changer for President Donald Trump's campaign, however, could be the upcoming presidential debates. The first of two is slated for the end of this month on June 27th. Many of us still vividly remember the first time the two candidates squared off in 2020. There were fireworks. Until, of course, President Biden appeared to have dozed off.
But Dr. Slawi, the head of your Operation Warp Speed, has said exactly the same thing. Are they both wrong?
I've spoken to Pfizer, I've spoken to all of the people that you have to speak to. We have great Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, and others. They can go faster than that by a lot. Become very political because the left, or I don't know.
Now, the enduring memory for me from that particular debate was moderator Chris Wallace constantly interrupting the two.
Mr. President,
which was heavily
Mr. President,
you would have
Mr.
been much
President,
later, Joe.
Mr. President,
much later.
Mr. President.
You're talking about 2 million people.
Mr. President, as the moderator.
I'm actually quite fond of Chris Wallace. He's a great American broadcaster, and I particularly enjoyed his recent interview with Bill Maher.
You told Jerry Seinfeld that if he wins, not loses, but wins, you're not going to go nuts again. So is it that you think Trump 2.0 wouldn't be as bad, or you just, don't care as much?
Oh, I care. What I'm not going to do is just lose my nervous system at every step of the way. I think he just thinks of power. He just wants to get that back. This is the guy who's going to be probably president again. So
you think so?
I think it's probably odds on, yes. I mean, he's certainly winning now, and Biden does not look like a very good candidate.
So there you have it. Super cynic Bill Maher unexpectedly injects us with a healthy dose of optimism. And there's even more inspiration coming your way as we round out this show. People have questioned the faith of former President Donald Trump. So I wanted to share something that he posted on Truth Social. It's a prayer, and it reads, "Strengthen him, Lord. Send legions of angels to protect him, Father. Guard and guide his heart and mind. Ease his cares and give him good rest. Give him your peace and wisdom. Cause his enemies to stumble and fall into confusion and panic. Give him energy and clarity. In Jesus' name, amen." This is beautiful. It tells me that after a very difficult trial, he knows where his help comes from. Thank you so much for spending some time with me. Feel free to like, subscribe, or comment. Looking forward to next weekend when I'll have a brand new episode for you. God bless.